On today's show, LeBron and Bronny James share a historic moment together and how JJ Redick is setting the tone early for the Los Angeles Lakers. It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you actually place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet. Just head on over to FanDuel.com. They've got so many different wagers. You can take a look at division winners, conference winners, different season awards, or just the outright favorites to win the Super Bowl this year. Right now, the Chiefs are plus 500, 49ers plus 700. Right behind them, the Ravens at plus 750, and then a three-way tie. The Houston Texans, Detroit Lions, and Buffalo Bills all plus 1,100. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Lakers, Andy Kamenetzky. You can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Lakers. And Andy, we had a historic moment, maybe undercutted a little bit by the fact that it was in a preseason game, but a historic moment nonetheless. LeBron James and Bronny Jr. sharing the court for the first time as a father-son duo. Honestly, you take aside the politics, the venom of some of the fans who talk about, all the negatives with Bronny and everything that's been circulating in the media and whatnot. But this was just a really cool moment, right? Like, I'm not a father. I don't have kids of my own, but like seeing that moment and seeing them share that moment was honestly pretty awesome.
Yeah, I know how much it means to both of them. And, two things can be true at once. It can be somewhat manufactured, which, it is. LeBron and Bronny being on the same team is very much a manufactured happening. It also doesn't mean that this isn't something that Bronny hasn't worked very hard for. Which he has. Like, by all accounts, he is in all appearances, he is a very grounded, I think, pretty level-headed kid, very hard worker. And, he's worked to put himself in this position. It's very clear how much playing with Bronny means to LeBron. And I was surprised a bit that they did this in the preseason, just because I thought in terms of just the overall showmanship, they might wait for this to come in the regular season so it doesn't undercut anything at all. But then I was reminded, and I did not realize this, but it had been Bronny's birthday. So that being the case, I can see why maybe, and I don't know for a fact, but maybe they decided to do this in a preseason game just because, father and son doing this on the son's birthday. But either way, it was definitely fun for everybody in the arena, and I imagine it meant a lot to LeBron and Bronny.
Yeah, I was a little kind of perplexed too. It's like, why burn this in a preseason game, right? The narrative, but the fact that it happened on Bronny's birthday, I'm sure that made the moment all the more special for them as a father-son duo. So, it is a really cool story, and it's something that I'm sure we're going to be paying attention to, maybe not necessarily all the time throughout the season, but we're going to have little updates throughout the season as to how, what's going on with the LeBron Bronny kind of dynamic with the Lakers. But the forefront for the Lakers is JJ Redick coming in, and it seems like he means business right out of the gate. Give me some of your early impressions of JJ Redick, the head coach, right? Because we've known him as, the player, the media personality, all this. What are your early impressions of JJ Redick now that he has firmly the head coaching reins?
That he is very much into details. He's very much into precision, and he is very much into time management. Like, it's not just the way he has talked about his own goals, it's the way everybody else on this team has talked about him. Like, I don't think a practice or media day has gone by where pretty much all of the players have not raved about just how detailed and meticulous and thoughtful Redick has been with everything that he's looking to install with this team, making sure everybody understands what they're doing, why they're doing it, and just putting everybody on the same page. And I think doing this in a way that can help offset some of the concerns that these guys rightly could have had about him being a first time, forget head coach, like other than players, 9 years old. He's never done
like
this
Pee-wee
before.
League, right? Somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And, it was interesting. There was a lot that was made on, a couple weeks ago. JJ was on Zach Lowe's now defunct podcast with ESPN, the Low Post podcast, but it made a lot of headlines when he announced that, or didn't even announce, but just confirmed that the starting lineup would be LeBron, AD, Rui Hachimura, D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, the group that went 22-10 last season, that last year's players wanted for quite a while before it actually happened. That it was a clear bone of contention between the players and Darvin Ham. And it's very unusual. I mean, you know this. You've covered many teams and coaches. These guys tend to treat this stuff like they are nuclear secrets and government codes, and
the most
the fate
top
of
secret intel of all
yes,
time.
like the fate of Western civilization rests on your opponent not learning your starting lineup until 30 minutes before tip. And I asked Redick at a recent practice, why go against the grain this way? What was the thought process? And he said two things. First of all, it's pretty obvious what it's going to be. Given particularly who's not available with Jared Vanderbilt, he would have been the only guy really in a training camp battle with Rui Hachimura for the fifth starting spot, the small forward spot. But with Vanderbilt currently unavailable, like it's fairly obvious who this is going to be. So why do all the theater? Why do all these weak attempt at
the
mental
dog and
games?
pony show of
right,
you're gonna have to work and earn your spot, all the coachism that you get through training camp. Yeah.
And he's like, this stuff is fairly obvious, so I just don't see the point in doing the theater. But also he said, I want clarity for my players. I want guys to understand as quickly as possible what their roles are going to be, how it's going to work. And if this is information that I already know, I don't want to waste my time or their time pretending that I don't know it. Like, this is what it's going to be. So the other variables that I don't know, which, could be the other 4 or 5 members of the rotation, I can focus more on that without having to pretend that the starting lineup is some secret. And I thought that was a really smart, streamlined way of approaching it. And it feels very typical to how he's doing a lot of things.
Honestly, I think the whole idea of, JJ Redick doesn't have any coaching experience at any level, let alone the NBA, I think that's kind of largely overblown. I get it. He hasn't been in the head coaching chair before, but at the same time, it's not like he's some Joe Blow you grabbed off the street to promote as the new head coach of the Lakers. He's a 15-year NBA vet, clearly a guy with a passion and an attention to detail when talking about the game, when discussing the game with his peers or with other media members. And then you cap that all off with the fact that this is something that clearly he wanted, right? Like he wanted this opportunity, and he knows what it looks like, right? He knows the dangers of becoming the Lakers head coach and all the, I guess, drama or all the expectations that come along with that. And yet he was like, no, put me in there, right? He could have probably had his pick of the litter of any other team this offseason that wanted to swap head coaches or try a new look and get the young, new, excited, JJ Redick off the, broadcast, off the pot, and here he is, he's your new head coach. He could have done any of that and taken an easy way out. And he said, no, put me in for the Lakers. Let me do that. I am cautiously, I guess, optimistic that JJ Redick is actually going to be a really good head coach.
I mean, it's worth noting, too, he didn't need this job at all. Like, JJ Redick built a legitimate media empire. Like, he rose to the top of the podcasting chain very quickly with his own show, with his production company. Like, you and I both have shows that I think are doing fairly well, but we would both kill to have the old man in the 3. Like, I mean, that show was doing incredibly well. Plus, he rose to the ranks of, ESPN punditry as fast as you could. Like, this was not something he needed. It was something he wanted. And I think that matters a lot. Rui Hachimura during a recent practice talked about how Redick, being not just a former player, but a former player that is so recently removed from the game, means that a lot of the players on this team are familiar with him, Jackson Hayes was actually a teammate of his several years ago. Like Christian Wood, I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's a chance their paths crossed a little bit in New Orleans. Like these guys know Redick. Obviously, he has a relationship with LeBron. They had their podcast together before he gave it all up to coach the Lakers. Like he's a great communicator. He is, in his parlance, a basketball sicko. Like he's obsessed over it. And he is described by everybody who knows him as an obsessive worker and somebody that is going to not just put in the work, but demand that everybody around him, whether you're talking players or Rob Pelinka or hell, even Jeannie Buss, like that everybody treats this with the same obsession as him. Now, does this guarantee that he will be good at executing in the role of coach? No, because until you've done it, you don't know exactly what it is. And that's why I actually think this preseason matters a lot for the Lakers, just to get Redick the reps coaching, much less coaching these guys. And I've been very pleased with how serious these guys seem to be treating the preseason and, preseason games and training camp, because the last handful of years, it has not felt that way at all. And I think it's shown a lot with some of the starts the Lakers have gotten off to. Everybody is clearly very, very dialed in. And I think that is in many ways a byproduct of the tone that Redick has set.
How many more moments will LeBron and Bronny share together this season? And how will JJ Redick continue setting the tone for the Lakers? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Lakers. Andy, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Anytime, man.